winning that game 10-7 in Missoula in the snowy blizzard and seeing the reaction from Bobcat Nation at the time. I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. And it got even more special in hindsight.
It's pretty unique, and I would put it up there. You know, obviously you got your Iron Bowls, you got your Ohio State, Michigan, you got your all those big rivalry games. But Cat Griz, I mean, it's not top 10, it's top 15.
Welcome, everybody, to the R&R Catcast, a fan-based podcast focusing on Montana State athletics. We're two dudes named Ryan from the state of Washington talking about our dear Montana State. We hope you enjoy. Welcome back, Bobcat fans. Cats disrupt senior night at Cal Davis, punch their playoff tickets en route, and now prepare for
Cat Griz.
Man, it feels good, Thorny. It is finally here.
It's here. We're coming off a huge win. Our playoff ticket is punched. It just doesn't get any better than this.
3 weeks ago, we were pretty dire. You and I were talking about how it just felt, just kind of doom and gloom. And now 3 weeks into November, we're feeling on top of the world. It feels good to be a Bobcat fan right now.
Feels great. I'm so excited, and I want to mention something here. It's kind of funny. The Griz basketball team just lost to Montana Tech. Just throwing that out there right in the beginning here while we're talking about things that are good.
It's an auspicious way to start the Cat Griz week.
Yep. Let's hope there's another upset brewing here.
All right, let's get a little to show outline. First, we're going to lead off with our beers. We're going to go into the news. We're going to do a little game recap. We're going to do a little game preview, and then we have a special segment for our listeners this week. We have two former players, Travis Lulay and Cory Nicol, will give their thoughts on what Cat Griz meant to them. We'll come out of that, and we're going to do our little fun segments. We'll have some Golden Koozie questions, some buy or sell, and some bold predictions.
Sounds good. I'm psyched. I'm so excited right now. I'm just keeping it contained.
It's bubbling over. All right, Thorny, what's on tap for tonight?
All right. So I do want to mention that you mentioned the dire episode that we had. You know what snapped us out of that funk? Me bucking up and drinking a beer called the Golden Grit, even though it was an IPA, and it really just took us out of our funk. And we've been undefeated since then. Ever since I decided to start picking beers based on the meaning of the label and how it pertains to the team instead of beers I might actually like to drink. So in that spirit, sports is nothing but superstitious. I got an IPA called Trophy Life because after Saturday, the Cats are still going to be all about that Great Divide Trophy Life.
It's an IPA.
It is. Yep. From Silver City Brewery, which is in Bremerton. It's not too bad. It's an IPA. I actually like it. Maybe I actually like IPAs better than I thought I did.
Well, you're coming around on the IPAs. I applaud you there.
Yeah. Yep. I'm just doing what I need to do to help the team win, really.
Well, I'm glad you're taking one for the team, Thorny. That's really commendable. I have one of my favorite beers, and I saved this beer for celebration type of things in my life. And I've talked about this one before. It's the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. I love it in the can, more so than I do in the bottle. And that's what I'm drinking tonight. It's a standard for me. You'll find it everywhere, but it's such a good pale ale. It's almost like how Moose Stroll is to just brown ales. Sierra Nevada is to pale ales. So there we go.
I saw when I was picking out my beer tonight that they have a celebration beer. Is that what it was called?
Yep. They make one every winter.
I was looking at that kind of beer, but I was like, no, celebration implies we're being cocky. We're not celebrating anything yet. There's work to be done. So I stay away from any beers with talking about celebrations.
That's a good point. Well, there's some stuff to celebrate, but we're going to talk about that a little later.
Yeah, of course.
All right, Thorny, let's move into the news for the week. The Cats move up from number 10 in the FCS stats poll to number 8. What do you think about that?
Hell yeah, we're the 8th ranked team in the country. You said it last week. Just buy it. Let's stop debating it. We're number 8. We're playing like it. We deserve it. We're number 8.
All right, let's move on from stats. I really have nothing else to say about that. That's good. What did you think of Jeff Choate's presser today?
It was pretty interesting. As a lot of it was what you totally expect from the press conference. One thing I did like that he said was, I don't know if it was a jab or if it's just true Jeff Choate talking, like honest, like he normally does. But somebody asked him about Jerry Louis McGee and how dangerous he is in the kick game, punt return game, and Choate just comes back, well, everyone's got a kick returner. Basically saying like he's not going to prep any differently. Like everyone's got one. It's not going to change it. You might be like you have to execute at a higher level, but he's not going to change anything for it. He went on to compliment him, so I don't think it was any sort of jab or anything, but it just kind of made me chuckle.
Yeah, he seemed really relaxed. He wasn't hyped at all. He just, matter of fact kind of mood. I just, he's been there before. So that's what I kind of took from it. One quote he said was, this is a forever game. And Choate knows the importance of the Cat Griz, and it's something that's not missed by him, but he doesn't seem like he's overwhelmed by it.
I was totally saving that quote for later on in the segment, but that is a really good quote. He said, it's foolish to pretend it isn't a big deal. These guys are going to have an answer for this for the rest, these guys are going to have to answer for this for the rest of their lives. It's a forever game, but you can't make more out of it in terms of the performance anxiety curve. We've got to kind of stay in the moment. It's true. It's absolutely true. I liked it. It's just such a stark contrast. It's kind of what I wanted to talk a little bit about of how Rob Ashe approached the game. I think Ashe took a lot of heat for just calling it just another game. Jeff Choate does not view this as just another game.
No, I mean, there's no way you can view this just as another game. So I remember when we hired Jeff Choate, that was a big concern for some people was, how are you going to view the Cat Griz? I mean, we were just on the heels of losing the Cat Griz with Rob Ashe, and so that was fresh on people's mind. And that was one of the things he talked about. He talked about the importance of rivalry games.
Well, basically, the last two coaches that coached at the two big Montana schools pretty much both got fired because they could not win Cat Griz games, respectively. So, yeah, kind of a big game.
Good point.
No extra pressure, but you lose 2 in a row, you're probably fired.
Do you think so?
No. Well, no. At least not in Bozeman. Maybe. Although if Houck loses this game, they're still going to be hoisting him up on a pedestal. So Houck's in no danger of losing his job, losing to the Cats.
How long do you think Houck's going to coach out Montana?
Honestly, I could see him staying there until he retires.
Well, yeah, I didn't question that. That was a foregone conclusion in my mind. How many more years do you think he's going to coach?
I don't know. How old is Houck? I don't even know how old he is.
He's got to be in his like 50s.
Like early 50s. I don't know. He's probably going to coach until he's like 66, 67.
That's a good point. All right.
And like you lamented a few weeks ago, it's just going to be the next Houck coaching after that.
It's nepotism is going to happen.
Your nightmare, I believe, is what you called it.
Yeah. All right, man. Hey, man, it is Cat Griz week. We got a ton to talk about, but first we got to recap the awesome win that was against Cal Davis last week that secured our playoff berth, something I'm super excited about. Let's get into those stats right now.
All right, so the Bobcats come back from Davis after beating the UC Davis Aggies 27-17 on the heels of a pretty darn good performance by Tucker Rovig, who went 17 for 25 for 217 yards. A reemergence, a return, maybe perhaps better, of Isaiah Nfonse, who rushed 10 times for 77 yards and a touchdown, and honestly could have had another one. Travis Johnson came back as well, 6 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown. Also had 3 catches for 61 yards with a long of 47, so it's good to see him back looking fast and healthy. It was just a good performance by a lot of guys that had been out for a while, but final stats ended up pretty close in a lot of ways. First downs for the Bobcats, 19, 21 for the Aggies, 430 yards for the Aggies, 501 for the Bobcats. But we'll get into how the Aggies got to that number because most of it was in the first half. Pretty even otherwise. Time of possession pretty heavily favored for the Bobcats, but again, a lot of that was because of a dominant second half performance by the Bobcats. the stats that we'll get into here in a little bit. But yep, it was a good performance, and it was a good performance by a lot of key Bobcats. That was really good to see.
We had 284 rushing yards. They only had 157. That was going to be a big thing for us this week because Alonzo Gilliam was just coming off a lights out game where he had over 200 yards himself last week. So that's pretty impressive.
Yep, it's true. He did have, they had 102 rushing yards by halftime. So they were, kind of moving the ball at will a lot in that first half. They had 333 yards of total offense for 7.24 yards of play in the first half with 15 minutes, almost 16 minutes of time possession. The second half, they were held to just 97 yards, 55 on the ground, 42 through the air for 3.59 yards per play, and just a time of possession of 8 minutes and 30 seconds. That was a dominant second half by the Bobcat defense in particular.
We hold Jake Meyer to his second lowest QB rating at 107.9 this entire season, and that's against games, and that's including games against North Dakota State and the Grizzlies. So that's super impressive. And then another stat that just jumped out was he did not throw a touchdown at home on senior night. That's just ridiculous. And so Jake Meyer definitely had a day, that he doesn't want to remember anytime soon. A couple drops when you watch that game, kind of aided the Bobcats. Some of those drives, the receivers just couldn't hold on to the ball. But man, yeah, Jake Meyer, not his normal self. He was 33 out of 50 for 273 yards. It's not a big day for him.
When you kind of think back to it, a lot of the teams that have played the Bobcats tend to have some drops, and you kind of go like, whew, that was like, if not for those drops. At some point, though, you got to give the Bobcat defense credit. They're either in their heads, they're flushing the quarterback, and the timing's a little bit off. There's something that the Bobcats are doing to disrupt some plays just enough that the guys aren't catching the balls in the way that they normally would. This happened several games throughout the year where the Cats seem to be aided by some timely drops by the opponent, but at some point you got to realize it's a habit or a pattern, and you can recognize the defense might be being a big part of that.
I hadn't thought about that, Ryan. There's probably a pretty good point.
Just to reiterate how dominant the defense was, the fourth quarter, Davis had 0 first downs, 23 total yards, and had the ball for less than 3 minutes.
Man,
that's just dominant.
Yeah. So when I was watching the game, it felt like in the fourth quarter, like we could smell the blood in the water. And then all of a sudden, when that happened, the Bobcats just turned a switch, and they just became this this dominant team. Now, it's hard to dominate someone on the road, especially on a senior night, especially when Cal Davis is playing for an outside chance of making the playoffs. So all that against the Cats, we were hanging tough. But it was like the fourth quarter, we just flipped the switch and just put them away, which begs the question, why can't we flip that switch a little sooner?
Bobcats are so just inconsistent throughout an entire football game. At least this game, throughout the game, they never had any sort of just collapse moment. I've talked about how there's always one game seems to be this series of events that just leads to points for the other team. It didn't really seem to happen. We took some shots from the Aggies. They moved up and down the field in the first half, but we held they were 1 for 3 in the red zone trips. They went for on fourth down. Meyer overthrew his wide open tight end, and they had a field goal opportunity, and they blocked a field goal, I think. So, 3 red zone opportunities for the Aggies and just 3 points out of it in that first half. That's pretty impressive.
Oh, no doubt. It just seems to me why can't we be that dominant team all game? And that's something that really concerns me. Like you said, we're really inconsistent. I think if the Cats really want to be a championship level team, you just got to bring the intensity all along.
Well, we talked about after the Northern Colorado game that we thought was one of the most complete games the Bobcats have played. And this isn't too far off of that for this year. There was, we had a lull in the third quarter, but our defense played really well in the third quarter. They gave up the touchdown, but then we scored 13 straight points to salt the game, and the defense clamped down and didn't let them do anything. So the first half, debatable how good it was, but we were still, winning 14-10 at halftime. So it was a pretty good performance for the entire 4 quarters of football. But the Bobcats certainly have a higher ceiling, and I totally agree with you. We need to be able to just play at that level the entire game that we played with in the fourth quarter and maybe the second half of the third quarter. Like, we have the ability to do that. We just can't seem to be the dominant team the entire game that we are capable of being.
Well, I think that has a little bit to do with our offense. We don't have a prolific offense. We have a prolific defense. But it comes to those body blows in the run game in the fourth quarter. They just stack up and, it just wears the teams out. So that might have something to do with it.
I was worried about that. We weren't having hardly any success running the ball against UC Davis there for a while, and we seem to be getting most of our success in the air. And I was getting worried that, like, hey, we're not really landing any body shots. I got to just remind myself that those, 1 yard run turns into a 5 yard run if we just keep going to it.
It goes back to what I said last week when I said we need to use the pass game to open up the running game. And I thought that did happen. That was clear in the fourth quarter. So Tucker Rovig probably had his best game at being a Bobcat.
No, he was aggressive.
Yeah. He was taking shots downfield and he hit his slants better than I've seen him do. He had a comeback route to Kevin Cassis on 3rd and long. I'm really starting to like Rovig back there. I've always liked Rovig, but he's making some steps. And the thing I think he could really improve upon a little bit is just kind of moving his eyes. Sometimes he just locks in on his deep balls. You know what I mean? And so he could just, maybe move his safety with his eyes or come back to another receiver during that progression. I think that's his next step.
Agreed. But in this particular case, like, Davis was clearly leaving some guys one-on-one and saying, beat us. And, you can stare down a guy when there's no safety within 30 yards of him, which is what happened on the 2 Cassis bombs. There was really no one around him. So, but I agree with you. Like, he's going to have to play smarter than that. But I think teams, the way they play the Bobcats, there's going to be one-on-one matchups pretty much every game. Tucker's
just so tough. I love that kid. I just love his toughness.
I love his toughness. He's just steadily improving. Like you said, best game as a Bobcat. I don't know what the ceiling is for him at this point still this year, but, this is big man month for Tucker Rovig too. Like, all right, this is it, man. This is no more working Tucker Rovig in. This is it. This is the playoffs. I mean, we punched our playoff ticket. Cat Griz game isn't a playoff game anymore, but, this is the time to step up, and you want to make a run in the playoffs. It starts right now, and everyone top down needs to have that mindset, including Tucker Rovig. It's time to get there.
Yeah, he does well in the run game too. Better than I thought he would be. So speaking of run game, let's talk a little bit about Alphonse.
It's a different dude. Like, there's just no other way to really say it. He's in the game. He's just different than any other running back on the team and any other running back in the conference. He just gets in there, just plows in the line. You think he stood up, and classic Alphonse, he's tackled in the pile 3 yards downfield later. It's crazy. It's the toughest runner I think I've ever seen, at least in the Big Sky Conference.
It doesn't feel like he hits the hole hard though. Like, he just seems like a very patient runner to me.
He's got this just great combination of vision, patience, power, and toughness. And no, maybe he could hit some of the holes harder, but he hits them hard enough that he never gets tackled going backwards.
Yeah, it's like you said, he's just different. I mean, we might be a little bit lulled by the fact that we have 3 running backs that are very similar: Shane Perry, Lane Sumner, and Logan Jones. And then Alphonse just brings just a different speed, a different style to him. And I think he just has better vision than those 2 guys, or those 3 guys.
The guy who probably hits the hole the hardest is probably Logan Jones. He runs really hard. He hits the hole fast. And once he puts his foot in the ground, he's kind of, he's got that burst to really just blow by any arm tackles or before, like, anybody being blocked before they even know that he's by them. So it's just important to have the full stable of those guys because they all complement each other. None of them are really the same, even though maybe like Sumner and Jones might be fairly similar, but they're all different in their own ways. And it's important to have them all healthy as we move into the stretch here.
That's something that I was thinking about, is just our health as a team. It's cool to see some of the guys getting healthy like late in the season, like Travis Johnson, and Fonse. It goes back to kind of the dialogue we've had about playing guys or playing a stable of guys. You know what? At the end of the season, it's starting to feel good that we have some options that, who have some guys who have some legitimate playing time, not just some guy that we've just been relying on who's been taking the majority of the snaps.
I mean, there's another contrast from the Jeff Choate era to the Rob Asher Ash got a lot of heat for basically playing his guys until they pretty much fell apart, which I guess you could argue they're doing a little bit with Troy Anderson right now. But, it's good to see just the rotation, keeping guys fresh. And that allows, when there is an injury, because there's always going to be injuries, the guy who is behind him steps up and he's got some experience right off the bat. Just look at the secondary. Munchie went down, came back a little bit, and he's pretty much, I don't think he's coming back this season. So then you got guys like, I think it's Tyree Gibson. I can't remember which Gibson's really playing a lot, but I think they're both kind of playing a little bit. And you see a lot of Dominic Brown. Like, those guys are starting to really become pretty solid cornerbacks because they've been playing for a few weeks now. And that's just a good example of those guys have had kind of on and off reps all year. And here they are playing probably their best football of the year here heading into Cat Griz.
Yeah, that's just a huge thing. Jeff Choate said he was going to be playing his best football come November. You know what? We are. We're peaking at the right time. That's a good feeling.
It doesn't hurt that for the health of the team that we played 2 teams before this that we could have beat pretty much any one of our running backs or wide receivers and some of the not lesser, but like the guys further down the depth chart on defense as well. The schedule kind of aligned to help us get healthy coming into this.
Yeah, we needed those games though. We were pretty low after North Dakota. That was those were timely games, and this game at Davis, I was just so happy on Saturday after he came back, after we won that contest. It was just felt so good to see the Cats just have a good win on the road. Davis had everything to play for in multiple facets, and we grounded out, and then we just closed it. That's just such a classic Bobcat victory right there.
And the Bobcats, took a knee on the 2-yard line with almost a minute left in the game, I believe. It was
more. That was like a minute 40 or minute 14 or something like that.
Yeah, I was thinking it was a minute 40 in my head, but I was like, that couldn't be right. But now that you've said it, it must be true. But yeah, could have easily scored another touchdown there if we wanted to. But I think Jeff Choate realized the team was beaten, and why risk doing any stupid plays to get any more people hurt? We're winning by 10. Call it good. It's not going to make any difference for any reason whatsoever. Playoff committee is not going to care. I think it was a classy move by Jeff Choate just to take a knee and get out there with a win.
Couldn't help but think during that moment, I'm not going to lie, Thorny, I thought if this was the Griz, punch it in.
Well, yeah. No tip of the cap there.
As you would say, step on their throats. Thorny, do you have any parting thoughts on Cal Davis?
The last thing I had on my notes here, I kind of want to talk about, and it's kind of not just a Cal Davis thing. It's been the last few weeks. The first half of the year, had some really bad snaps, and it seems like our snapping problem, our shotgun snaps, have gotten a lot better. Have you noticed that?
It doesn't ring a bell in my head, so no, I haven't noticed it.
Well, I guess that's a good thing because it was a problem there. I think it was even the North Dakota game. There was just some really bad snaps that I don't know. I'm not savvy enough, and I don't watch closely enough to know who's at offensive line every time. I don't know if I know Zach Red was listed at the starting spot. Was he? I think he was injured for a little bit, so I'm not sure what's going on there. I've also noticed, perhaps because of this, that it seems like Tucker Rovig is taking a lot more snaps under center.
Yeah, he has a little bit of problem taking that snap under center too. It feels like he more than once he's fumbled the ball and recovered it himself in that scenario.
Fumble it, recover yourself. He passed one to himself earlier. Man, he knows what he's doing.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Good job, Tucker.
I like to see us go under center more. It's been just a good thing for me to see. It helps. I think it's really helped attack the edges because that's where we send the guy across in motion behind him and he can hand it off. That's so reminiscent of the 2006 season. I remember that was like Don Bailey and Mike Kramers fell in love with that end around fake thing that they ran 30 times a game. Do you remember that?
Michael Jefferson.
Yeah, Michael Jefferson, Jack Rolovich. It's we ran it all the time into the ground. Anyway, tangent. Let's not get back into the Don Bailey discussion ever.
You know what? My parting thoughts on the game is Matt Miller still on the sidelines. He's calling some better games. I felt like we played to win this game. And that was one of my concerns last week, that Jeff Choate would hold Matt Miller in, so to say. I don't feel like that happened. I felt like we played to win the game on both sides of the ball. The only kind of gripe I have is like I really don't like our passes to the flats. Tuckerovic just doesn't get the ball to the flat very fast or in the right spot. We never seem to make any gains on that. There's always like a 2-yard loss if we're passing.
I guess you could look at it from a mental standpoint. Like, okay, yeah, it's a 0-yard completion, but it was a completion, and Tuckerovic could be build upon that he threw a completed pass. Like, he just seems to be a guy who needs to get any completion, even if it's for 0-yard, negative 1-yard gain. Maybe just a thought.
Yeah, the only egregious error I saw Tuckerovic make was on a screen pass. He just threw it right to the defensive lineman, and the defensive lineman just like bobbled the ball and went to the ground. Had the defensive lineman like caught that, Tuckerovic was the only guy that was going to save that from being another pick six.
I forgot about that play.
Oh, it was like, woof. Well, we were pretty lucky on that one. If he just floats it over the top, hits Lane Sumner on the back end, and Sumner has some green, but it wasn't even close. I mean, it was just like, it was almost like he thought Sumner or that defensive lineman was the receiver. It was just really weird.
Rovic has this kind of like almost little sidearm flip pass he kind of does. He's done that where there's been a blitz off the corner, and instead of like sidestepping him, he'll like throw it around him. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
So I have. That camera angle was impossible to tell, but he just tried to like sling it, like instead of up and over like this 6'5", because he looked like a big dude. I remember it. I don't know if he just tried to like sling it sideways, like by him, try to sneak it between two guys and just threw right into his stomach. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, got lucky on that one.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was set up really well. Like every single lineman bid on it. Sumner was just standing there all by himself. Yeah. Whew.
All right, man. I'm ready to move on.
Such a big, important win because it builds momentum heading in to Cat Griz.
But you know what feels way better is knowing that we have our playoff ticket punched. And that just takes a load off my shoulders. I'm telling you, Thorny, right now that going into this game, I feel so much better not having to worry about, hey, are we going to make the playoffs? I feel like I might be able to enjoy this game just a little bit more.
When's the last time that happened? The last time we made the playoffs before Jeff Choate was here was 2014.
11?
No, it was 2014. Pro Cup. We lost to South Dakota State.
That's true. But did we need the Cat Griz to...
I think we lost that Cat Griz game.
Yes, you're right.
That would have been the last time that we didn't need to beat the Griz to get in the playoffs. But yeah, like last year we needed to. And then, yeah, before that was probably 2011 when we were number one team. We got beat by some sort of phantom team that I can't find in the record books. I don't know who beat us, but we lost it somehow.
Yeah, that was one of the. I don't even want to talk about that. Okay?
Yep, we're not going there.
Okay,
what do you want to talk about, man? This is going to be a longer episode. We're just getting into the meat. Where do you want to start?
Let's talk about some matchups. Where's MSU at in U of M? When we're just looking at just total offense, total defense, stuff like that, passing, rushing. How about we run some stats? Kind of talk about some matchups there.
All right. I don't have all the stats for some of the things you named. I don't know if you do.
Yeah. So I'll start out. So Montana's. So in just the scope of the Big Sky, Montana is number 2 in the offense, total offense right now. Montana State is number 6 in total offense.
Quick question. Are you looking at total stats or conference only stats? I'm curious.
Conference only.
Okay. I looked at overall stats, but regardless, they're going to paint a similar picture.
So let's just give, let's try this, Tony. Let's give our take on like who has the upper hand when it comes to what we're just about to talk about. Okay. So when it comes to just basic offense, who has the upper hand?
Griz.
Why?
Because they're more dynamic.
Are they?
Yep. They're more balanced. Oh, they're more balanced, I guess is a better word than dynamic. They score more points against, honestly, some tougher competition, and they've only been held below like 30 points like once all year by FCS competition. And yeah, they can do a lot more things on the ball. So I would say that right now, the Griz have a better offense. I'm not saying we have a bad offense, but I'd say the Griz.
Well, I would argue that they're more balanced. I think they rely more on their passing game than they do their running game for sure. And I feel like Montana State does a good job of balancing. We're always around that 200 mark on passing, and we're always about that 200 mark on rushing too. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to give the nod to U of M on their offense. They just have too many weapons on the outside. Sammy Akim, Samara Torrey, Jerry Lou McGee. I feel like that guy's been around forever. Dalton Sneed, 5th-year quarterback again.
Yet again.
Yeah, so I'm going to give, when it comes to the offense, I'm going to give them the nod.
An interesting stat about the Griz offense is, they're only 7th in rushing offense, but they've scored the second most rushing touchdowns in the conference. They've scored 28, which is only behind the Bobcats, who scored 33. So they don't have a lot of
rushing offense.
Well, that would be the Bobcats.
You
Who
bet
cares
it
about?
is.
I don't care if you're on the triple option. You can't rush for as many yards as this crazy, weird Wildcat hybrid offense can.
And you know what's impressive about that is exactly what Jeff Choate talked about in his presser last week, is the fact that we are doing that with multiple different players. That's just awesome.
It's awesome. It's weird. I still like, I'm leaning towards it's a good thing, but it's just one of those like, no one else does this. Is this just weird or innovative or stupid? But it's been kind of by a lot of the running back, at least, has been by design. We just had some injuries to Logan Jones and Isaiah Nfonse and Troy Anderson. So we've had to go all the way down to like 5th string Shane Perry. You've had to do it.
Well, at mid-season, I would say it was kind of like how you feel like, oh man, this is not the most ideal situation. But now, late November, all these guys have critical playing time and experience in success. That's huge. Like, we got dudes who know what it takes, and multiple dudes who knows what it takes. I like that.
All right, so we both agreed the Griz offense has a slight advantage over the Bobcat offense.
Okay, let's talk about defense. MSU right now in the Big Sky is ranked number 3rd in total defense. U of M is right on their heels, number 4.
Well, I would say that I think the Bobcats have the better defense overall, but this is a very close toss-up. I think the Cats can play more of a shutdown approach, and they're just better rounded in all phases, but the Griz probably have the better playmakers and quite possibly the better just like design, like just the way they run it. I was listening to Coulter Nuanez on his show, the ESPN show, and he's talking about how the Griz have like the worst passing defense, but it's kind of by design because they're geared so much to stop the run that they kind of leave a guy on an island all the time. And I was like kind of talking about earlier, that's how teams kind of approach the Bobcats because they just need to kind of stack the box. But they're going to have, a little bit more a worse passing defense because of that. But overall, they've been shut down at times. The Bobcats have just been so dynamic lately with Troy Anderson really coming on. I think Braden Conkle it was really good to see him kind of play to what I think a lot of people were expecting him against UC Davis. He kind of just turned it up a notch, had an interception, was flying over the field, was laying dudes out. I think that the Bobcats have the ability to be better of the two defenses.
Slightly.
It's close. Like the Griz defense is stout. This is not something I try and say as a homer, but the Griz have a really good defense. I just think the Bobcats have a slightly better defense. They don't have any holes like the Griz do passing defense.
Yeah, and the Griz bring more pressure. So Jeff Choate mentioned this in his presser that they bring pressure about 70% of the time. That's not Montana State. So when you're just like eyeballing it, if you don't know anything about defense, it might seem like UM's defense is more sexy because they're going to bring more pressure. Oh yeah, but they do have those holes on the outside. Just a quick breakdown. I think Montana State's the defensive line is greater than U of M's. I think we have better corners than U of M. I think the Griz have better linebackers, not better safeties, but better linebackers. But they use their linebackers different than we use our linebackers. They're going to blitz their linebackers a little bit more. They're going to use them more in the run support and sometimes in coverage as well. Dante Olson is just a wrecking machine. That guy is just one of the most intimidating physical people I've ever seen. Robbie Houck, even though, I don't really have anything good to say about that. The Houks, he's just a legit good ball hawking kind of dude.
He's a missile. He's just a missile out there.
and one thing that I'm really impressed with the Griz is, and it's something that I wish Jeff Choate would emphasize a little bit more. It's just effort. Like, I think he does, but like, I think that's what Bobby Houck's teams are so good. They just fly to the ball. Like, he demands this kind of, tenacious attitude that everybody's just going to go as hard as they can. And I would say he does it a little bit better than Jeff Choate.
Yeah, I think Jeff Choate teams play a little bit more even. They keep it level-headed, and that's kind of, they stick to their plans a little bit better. I feel like if things go wrong for the Bobcats, they're just fine. They're going to keep grinding. But you have a team that plays with so much fire and passion like the Griz defense do. When things start to snowball, they can really snowball because they don't know how to handle being punched like that. So it's a pros and cons to both. But I would agree that right now I think that the Griz are just playing with a real good passion and fire. And like you said, they're just playing hard, and it's really showing. And that's really why they're arguably right on pace with the Bobcats defensive unit, in my opinion.
It's a good point. All right, Thorny. And the next thing I have is U of M is number 1 in the conference in third down conversions, and MSU is dead last.
We've had some good games on and off, but overall, we are dead last, and I don't even think it's really that close. We're like 33% on third down conversion, while conversely, the Griz are first in third down percentage offense. So quite the stark contrast there. Not even close, not even the contest.
Well, they are first, but it's only like 46%. So the comparison of 46 to 33%, not that much difference, but
it's huge. It's 13 team difference.
Well, it is, but I don't know. I mean, we could argue that. But yeah, that's been a sticky point for us all year long is our third down conversions. And not even all year long, going back 2 years, right? Underneath the Troy Anderson offense. So we're getting better. But if you look back even on this week, we were 4 for 13 on third down. Davis was 2 for 14. So I mean, but 4 for 13, that's never good. And we need to be closer to 40 to 50%.
Our red zone defense is 5th, holding teams to 35.7. So we do have a pretty good red zone defense. It was such a huge problem last year. We've really cleaned it up, but we're still, Montana's even 3rd on that. So Montana being the 3rd best red zone defense and our offense being the worst red zone offense, am I saying red zone? Third down conversion. Yeah, that's a bad matchup for the Bobcats.
Yeah, we're just going to have to be creative on our play calling. And I think that comes back to it just right there. Sometimes we're just too predictable. We know what we're going to do. I listened to when we were listening to the game on Saturday, I mean, even the guys, when Troy Anderson or Travis Johnson comes in, the announcers for Cal Davis are like, well, we know what's going to happen now. It's true. So we just need to have a little bit more variety on third down.
Yeah, that's true. I remember you texting me like, I'm so sick of the Travis Johnson Wildcat run, and then he scores a 75-yard touchdown. Just saying.
He was huddled up in the backfield, man. He made that all by himself. That was not I don't want to say he got lucky, but because he didn't get lucky, he just he was just a better athlete than everybody on the field at that point. But I mean, it was a broken play, really.
I kind of like what Jeff Choate said in the press conference today. Is like, you just keep running and running. Eventually, those creases will be there. Like, just the nature of the game. That's kind of what happened. Like, all right, yeah, Travis Johnson's going to hit a brick wall 3 times. The 4th time, he's going to score a 60-yard touchdown. So it's just kind of you just keep going at it, and eventually you'll find a lane, and Johnson has the ability to take it to the house.
Yeah,
most of the running backs, like all of our running backs, have the speed to go the distance.
But I'm gonna play a little devil's advocate. Like, you were the person who texted me on a 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 6 when Troy Anderson was in there that led to a 4th down where we kicked a Tristan Bailey field goal. Like, I hate that play when Troy Anderson has the ball. I mean, it's the same thing. We all know what's coming. So does the defense. So why do you run that play? When you're in
I have no recollection of this.
When you're in the red zone and you line up Troy Anderson behind there and you got 4 to 6 yards to go and he's obviously not healthy, it's not a good play at that point.
But that's just going to be part of our offense. And whether you agree with them or not, Jeff Choate thinks they are who they are. So they're going to continue to see those kinds of things. I wonder if we're going to see more of that. More Wildcat quarterback or less Wildcat quarterback against the Griz.
I bet you the Griz are hoping to see more of it. If I was a defensive coordinator, I'd hope to see more of it because I know it's coming. Like 90% of the time, Troy Anderson, Travis Johnson, maybe even more than 90% of the time are holding on to the ball. You send a guy like you said, Robbie Houck, you called him a missile. Well, he's going to be a heat-seeking missile to that guy. That's pretty easy right there.
Yeah, but you see how dangerous the Bobcat game can be when the Wildcat quarterbacks do give it up. When Troy Anderson gives it up, it's like you can't stop him.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point.
So if it's going to happen, it's going to happen this game. If there's going to be more pitches, of course, Troy Anderson might not be able to even lift his arm. He got dinged up pretty hard against the Aggies. He would have had an interception if he could lift his shoulder up to his face. So a little concerned about that. So if we do run Troy Anderson and he is hobbled like that, then yeah, I guess he does. He does do the zone read because I remember the last game in Colorado where I think it was Patterson came across and it was a zone read option and Troy pretty much ripped Willie Anderson down to the ground, or Willie Patterson, because he thought he was going to get it. He's pulled it so hard that he spun him around. So yes, he does do the handoffs as well. I thought he mostly did pitches, but he does hand it off. The other formation I've seen that the Bobcats are pretty good out of just running the ball is that weird I formation looking pistol thing where there's like 3 running backs right behind Troy Anderson. That one's pretty hard to stop.
We're going to need some wrinkles like that against the Griz, but we can't be too gimmicky either. I'm really interested to see what Matt Miller has dialed up for this game.
You're not a fan of the can't hold anything back Dan Fouts style play in here?
Nope.
There are things, we're kind of just going through some not obvious stats that we kind of are looking at. I guess is kind of the segment we're in right now. The Griz red zone offense is only 9th in the conference. They're only scoring on 79.2% of their trips. Most of those are touchdowns, so I'll give them credit for having a pretty high touchdown rate, but they're only converting on 79%, whereas the Bobcat defense is number 4 red zone defense. They only allow 78.8% of the time. I mean, you're talking a matter of percentage here, but these, when it comes to points, it's 1% is, 6-7 points a game. So it's a big difference. Whereas the Cats red zone offense is 2nd. We score 89.1% of the time. And the Griz red zone defense is 7th at 81% of the time allowed. So there are some matchups there because as we found out last week, both these teams, especially I think the Griz are going to move the ball between the 20s, but can they score points? The Aggies couldn't. They moved the ball pretty well in the first half, but they couldn't punch it in when it mattered. And that's going to be crucial, just crucial for the Bobcats to hold them if they get in the red zone from scoring. Because I think that's going to be a big part of the game plan. They're not going to play like Weber. Weber plays a lot more man-to-man stuff. We're going to keep a lot of stuff in front of us. I don't expect the Griz to have those huge plays like that, like the slants where Samari Torre takes 70-yard slant pass for a touchdown. It might happen, but I expect us to defend it a little bit differently. But they will be, there'll be plenty of options for, I think, Snead to complete passes. I just hope that we can stiffen up when it comes into the red zone.
I think we just need to keep Snead uncomfortable.
Well, he's just another quarterback who can move with his legs and get the ball out quickly. So, and he's a 5th-year senior. So, just another one of those. All right. So we talked a little bit about some stats, and we've hit on all this stuff here. We've hit on a lot of the stuff that I want to say right here, but I kind of want to break it down real quick. This will be pretty quick at this point. How is the Griz offense going to attack the Bobcat defense?
No, I think they're going to have to do it through the air. And then that's going to set up the run. We've been susceptible to the RPO, specifically the slants across the middle. And I think they're probably going to try to get Samara Torre on the outside, isolated, some deep shots. So I imagine in Bobby Houck fashion, they're probably going to try to go big early on, right? Can't you imagine that they're going to get their first possession and they're going to try to hit a deep shot, send a message. I think we'll probably try to do the same thing. But yeah, I think they're probably going to play the RPO game on us and try to hit us over across the middle.
It seems like the last 3 Cat Griz games, the Griz have came out just like struck right away. I remember our keys to victory last year. I was like, whoever strikes first is going to win. And the Griz struck first pretty easily. The Griz scored a big, huge play the first game of like the 2016 or I guess it would have been the 2016 game. Like it's something that Jeff Choate teams can weather. That goes back to just being the level-headed thing. Like, yeah, okay, if the Griz do come out and strike, that's not going to be the end of the world. I'd be more concerned if the Griz came out and had like a 7-minute drive running the ball with Marcus Knight, like a 12-play, 7-minute drive and end up with a touchdown. That'd be much more concerning than them coming out and scoring like an 80-yard touchdown pass.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen. That's not their MO, is to run the ball like that.
Yeah, you never know in a rivalry game. You might kind of switch up the strategy because we have, like, Gilliam did shred us a little bit there in the first half. So there are some running lanes against the Bobcats. I'm curious to see how the Griz do attack Bobcat defense right now.
That's a good point.
All right, other side of the ball. How do you think the Cats attack the Grizzly defense? This is kind of the bigger chess match, in my opinion. How are we going to possibly score points against a seemingly pretty tall task?
Well, I think we have to attack their pass defense. Right? I mean, they're the last in the conference. We have to get the ball out fast, though. And that's the thing Tucker Rovig has struggled maybe just a little bit with, is holding on to the ball. So our offensive line is going to have one heck of a game. And I think we're going to need to get the passing game going early on.
It's a good time, I think, to put a golden koozie question in here. This is kind of a bigger picture question, but it's really pertinent to what we're talking about right now. Bobcat fan 123 on the Bobcat Nation said, can Rovig be proficient against a defense that's susceptible to passing attack? Or when the game is on the line, do we just put in the athletes, Troy Anderson, Travis Johnson, and just go with that? What do you think here?
I think it's both. I don't think you separate the two. I think Kevin Cassis is going to have a big game. So he's going to be probably lined up against Justin Calhoun. Justin Calhoun was picked on even by Jake Constantine last week from Weber. Kevin Cassis had a heck of a game. I don't remember even the name of the corner, but Cal Davis's corner was one of the top corners in the league. Well, Kevin Cassis just had his best game as a Bobcat statistically. He had like 130-some yards of offense. Well, we're going to need him to break some big plays. And so I think, Tucker Rovig is going to have some shots with Kevin Cassis. And I think that's going to really open up some plays, and then you're going to have to use the quarterback by committee. You're going to have to bring Travis Johnson in. You're going to have to bring Troy Anderson in. So, yeah, I think there's a blend there.
So are you answering yes, can Rovig be proficient against a defense susceptible to the pass?
Yeah, I think he can.
And you think the game is on the line, we're going to roll out Rovig or Travis Johnson?
Travis Johnson. I mean, if the game is on the line, so let's say it's fourth quarter,
Cal Poly overtime.
Yeah, we need a score. Let's say we're down 3 or 4, or just trying to tie it up or something like that. Who are we going to go with? I'm stalling here because I really don't know.
Well, let me you think about that. I'll kind of talk a little bit. I think Rovig can be proficient against a defense susceptible to the pass, but it's all going to depend on how good of a rush they can put on him. The Griz have a really good rush defense, or a pass rush defense. There we go. They get to the quarterback. I think they're second in the league with like 29 sacks or something, which is 13 sacks or something behind the conference leader Sac State, who was just on a tear. The Bobcats are the best at protecting Rovig, but he has gone under heat. He got sacked twice at Davis. So I think he can, provided he has protection. That's the caveat for me there. And I'm not sure if we'll be able to keep Rovig off his back or not. When it comes to the game on the line, honestly, I think it depends on the situation. If we have 80 yards to go, it's Rovig. If it's something like the overtime game where we only need maybe to get 30 yards to get in a field goal range or something, I might be thinking that the coaches, I'm not saying this is how I would go, but the coaches are probably going to lean on the Wildcat quarterback game right then.
I think you're probably right, Ryan. One thing that really gives me a little bit of pause is, like, can we avoid the big sack? And like you said, like, the Griz are really good at sacking the quarterback. Like, if we get behind and let's say we start out like we get a sack and we're now 14 yards to the first down, that's not a good thing for the Cats in this game. So I don't know if we can overcome that.
I do want to see Rovig be more decisive in terms of bailing on the play, like throwing the ball just 50 yards out of bounds over the head of a receiver. I want to see him not take the sack. So that's something I would like to see some improvement on. I think we're going to need that kind of headsy giving up on the play. That he just seems to take some sacks where he should have gotten rid of the ball, in my opinion.
There's a couple plays in the Cal Davis game where he hit Jacob Hadley and who else is our tight end?
Ryan Davis
Snell.
or
Yeah, Snell. And just on a couple outs, in and out, and it was just like a 5-yard completion, and it was easy. It's just like, wow, we just need that. Like if we could go back to that and just keep doing that, like first, second down, just get 5 yards. That's just something to think about right there.
It's such a big play for the Bobcats. Just a little 4-yard tight end pass on a first down, huge. Second and 6, manageable.
Yeah, and then you run Sumner for 3 yards, and then you got like a 3rd and 2, and 3rd and 2 we can get. Maybe not all the time, definitely not all the time, but that's way better than a 3rd and 7 for us. We just need to, at that point, we need to make Tucker have some easy outs, some easy options for 5-10 yard completions. We don't need him to go deep all the time. We just need to get him in a rhythm. And I think that's an important part to this game.
One other thing that I would, good question, Bobcat fan 123. We've gone completely off the rails on that question, but thank you for the question. One more thing I want to talk about with Rovig. He seems to have some issues this year with the ball being batted, which is, you wouldn't expect that for a guy who's like 6'5", bordering 6'6". So the interception leader for the Griz is their defensive lineman, like Alex Gubert. I hope I'm saying his name right, but he's got 4 interceptions. So we can't have the Griz clearly are good at tipping balls. Rovig seems to be struggling a little bit, not like a huge problem, but he's had batted balls like seemingly every game, multiple batted balls. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on.
I think it's just because of his eyes. He's just staring down his receivers.
Doesn't see the 6'5", 300-pound lineman standing right there throwing into his stomach on a screen pass.
Apparently not.
Well, the other thing, the last thing I want to say about the Cat offense attacking the Grizz defense, obviously we have to have some success passing the ball, but we're going to make our money running the ball. I think just going to have to keep at it. I don't know if the Grizz are going to wear down like the other teams do. They have a lot more depth than your average team does along the defensive line and front seven. So I don't really see us straying away from just trying to wear them down and being the more physical team up front on the line. This game is going to be physical.
Always is.
It has been. In the last 3 years, the Cats have been the more physical team, but it's pretty clear that Bobby Houck has put a huge emphasis on being a more physical team this year, and it's really paying dividends for them because they completely beat the snot out of Weber State physically.
You know what?
Which is concerning to me.
Yeah, I mean, they did. I'll give the Grizz credit, but I think the Weber State kind of pissed down their leg a little bit too, honestly.
Yeah, if you look at a lot of things, the game started off as bad as you could ever start a football game pretty much for Weber State. They had 3 bad snaps that all led to turnovers. Like when the first quarter, it just got out of hand real fast, and Weber's not a team built for that. Well, the Bobcats aren't a team built for that either, but they weathered that. You want to talk about battle tested? I've heard a lot of talk about how the Grizz are battle tested because they've had a stronger schedule. The Bobcats have come back from games by running the ball. So that's pretty battle tested too. Like being down 21-0 against Northern Arizona, 28-7, and then just running the ball 30 sometimes in the second half and coming back and storming back. That's battle tested too. Like just because your strength of schedule may not be the same, you've had plenty of adversity, and I think the Bobcats can weather any kind of storm like that. So I think that's a big key as well.
Yeah, I don't see the Bobcats coming out like in a fury in this game.
No,
conversely,
never do.
Conversely, I could see the Grizz doing just that, and then the Cats coming back in the second half.
I think I read a stat that the Grizz are actually not a good first quarter team. They've only scored a handful of touchdowns in the first quarter all year.
Yeah.
That's going to be a huge key. It's just the halftime score. The Grizz have just been steamrolling opponents in the second half. The Bobcats have kind of shied away from steamrolling opponents in the second half and have let some teams back in the second half, but we kind of got back to that against Davis. But I think if the Cats are even or winning at halftime, we have a good outlook. If we're down 7 or 14 at halftime, that's really not a spot we want to be against the Grizzlies.
I don't know if I really agree with that. I think if we're down 7 or 14 at halftime, we have some second half surge. I mean, we're at home. This is the Cat Grizz. Everything's, I don't know. like you could take every trend that we just talked about and throw it out the window, honestly. I mean, this literally is Cat Griz. Anything can happen.
Well, I agree with that 100%. All this talk is ultimately meaningless in this game because the complete opposite of what you think will happen will happen. Like, all right, well, you said it. What are your just kind of your quick 1 or 2 sentence keys to victory?
We can't panic. And I don't think the Bobcats do panic. And that's something Jeff Choate has instilled the saying into his teammates or into his players, don't flinch. I think that's a huge thing here because I think the Grizzlies probably will come out hot. And I think Tucker Rovig needs to have a decent game for us to win. I think he provides the X factor that we missed last year. I mean, we won last year, but it took for us to pass in the second half to hit a couple deep balls in order to open up that game. Travis Johnson and Troy Anderson single-handedly, offensively won that game for us. We're not going to have that this year. So we're going to have more of a holistic offensive approach. So those are my 2 keys. We're going to have to weather the storm, don't flinch, and we're going to have to be consistent on offense. And I think that's going to start with Tucker Rovig.
Those are good keys. I like those, and I agree with those 100%. I have 3 myself, in no particular order. I got the red zone defense. As I talked about, the Grizzlies will get their yards between the 20s, I feel. Davis got their yards, couldn't punch it in. So I think just keeping the Grizzlies out of the end zone, holding to a field goal tries will be a huge piece of this game. Number 2, don't get beat on special teams. Don't let Jerry Lou McGee have a game-changing, game-breaking, huge return in a game that's a close game and just blows the lid off and gets momentum really on the Grizz side. Same with, I think it's Malik Flowers, their kick return man, who's also pretty prolific. I'm probably an idiot because he's probably hurt or something. I didn't do any research on this, but just don't get beat on special teams. Don't let the Grizz change the momentum with the special teams play. And then the last thing is win the physicality battle. Be the more physical team. Like if the Bobcats, if any MO we have, we're a team that gets into bar fights. We can't let a team come into Bozeman and beat us at that, because if they beat us at that, then none of the rest matters at all. If they come in here and just punch us in the face and push us around, we're going to lose. So those are my 3.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Ryan.
All right. Well, let's talk briefly. Playoff scenario. Moving on from the Griz game. Alec Nice on Twitter asked us, in a perfect world, the Bobcats win. Of course. But now 4 Big Sky teams are worthy of a top 8 seed. Do they all get in? And if not, who should drop out? Foley, what do you think on that?
I think the Big Sky's going to have 4 in regardless.
We're talking seeds specifically. So you think we're going to have 4 seeds? Yeah.
No. I think we'll have 3 seeds. I think U of M is going to be seeded regardless if they win or not. I think either Sac State or Weber will be seeded. And if we beat the Grizzlies, I think we have a chance of getting seeded. So I think the Big Sky is going to have 3 seeds.
But I agree with Alec here. Like, who's not getting seeded? You can't drop Weber. They have 1 FCS loss.
So it depends on what happens this week.
So you think Weber's losing to Idaho State?
No, I don't think Weber's going to lose to Idaho State.
So then the only scenario left for you is Sac State losing to Davis.
Yeah, and that could be a possibility.
That's the most likely of outside of the Cat Griz game.
Yeah, the Causeway Classic right there.
I personally think if the Bobcats win, all 4 teams get a seed. I don't really see how Sac State drops. I don't see how Weber State drops. I really don't see how the Griz drop all the way out on losing the number 8 team on the road. I guess it kind of depends. If the Griz lose in a close one, they get seeded. If the Griz get blown out, they probably might lose their seed. So it's quite possible all 4 teams get a seed. I don't see who you can drop out. They're all ranked in the top 8.
Well, that's a good point. That's a really good point. It just seems unlikely that 4 Big Sky teams would have a seed, a top 8 seed in the playoff. But you know what? You're right. I mean, all those teams right now currently are in the top 8. That's a really good point.
It's hard to think of like a scenario where they're not, if the Bobcats win in this scenario, and the other 2 should win. Like, it's hard to think of a scenario where they're not all seeded. It's crazy to think about, but I don't see how you drop. Weber can't drop. Sac State can't drop. So like, it's weird.
So if Sac State loses again to Cal Davis this week, they're not going to be seeded. They'll be in the playoffs,
sure.
but they're not going to be seeded.
All these teams are playoff bound, regardless.
Yes. Okay.
All right, that's a good question, Alec. Thanks for the question. His other question is, if you and I have ever thought about doing a Bobcat basketball podcast, maybe just once in a month review. We have thought about it. Neither of us can just really watch the Bobcat games. We're just too busy. So I just don't see how we could ever do it. I'd love to do it, but I also don't know very much about basketball and just can't watch half the game. So it would be a pretty worthless podcast.
Thorny, I'm going to sing a little different tune on you, man. I'm not going to say no on that. If the Bobcats right now are just super exciting, we are like 4-1 right now. We just won what was it called? What invitational where we were just at over in Greensboro?
Spartan?
Yeah, I think it was that. I mean, the Cats. I mean, we haven't talked Bobcat basketball. We could spend about 10 minutes talking Bobcat basketball right now. We're not going to, but yeah, the Cats are a different team with Danny Sprinkle right now. And we have some momentum. I mean, there's a lot of good things. So once a month, I'll put it on right now. It's on the air. I'm game.
Well, what always happens is the season wraps up. We are kind of a little relieved in a way because, all right, it's a lot of work. We put a lot of work in this podcast, but then like a couple weeks pass and you kind of get the itch. You just want to start recording again. So you never know, I guess. You never know, but definitely probably not while basketball or football season's still going. So we won't rule it out there, Alec. We won't rule it out, but certainly don't know. If we know nothing about football, I know even less about basketball, even though I played basketball for like 8 years.
All right, Thorny. Do you want to get into introducing our special segment?
Yeah. So first and foremost, the Travis Lulay interview we released. Gosh, how long ago was that? I don't even know. But we have the full interview available. I'll probably retweet it at some point this week. I'll be retweeting some other. It's just fun content for everyone to digest here this week because it's Cat Griz week. No one's getting any work done. Everyone wants to be listening to consuming Bobcat content. But he had a good little bit about what Cat Griz meant to him. So I thought it would be fun just to snip that little bit and put it in here. And I had the opportunity to sit down. I guess I did sit down, but interview Cory Nicol, who was a former Bobcat defensive back from 2008 to 2009. I interviewed him on last Wednesday. So he had some nice things to say about the Cat Griz rivalry and how big it is and how much it meant to him. So what we'll do is we'll play the Travis Lulay snippet here, and then we'll just probably launch straight into the Cory Nicol one. So I will be releasing the Cory Nicol interview in its entirety, probably on Thursday or Friday. Just another piece of content for you guys to enjoy. So let's get into those right now. Enjoy.
So do you have a favorite memory of your playing time there in Bozeman?
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, yeah, just, there's a few that obviously stick out. I think it was really, really cool to see, like, when I got there in 2002, right, I didn't really, honestly, like, I didn't know the streak against the University of Montana was a thing, right? Like I had no idea. I remember sitting in the academic center and I knew Montana was, had come off a national championship the year before. And so I knew, whatever, they had their thing going on. And they felt pretty good about what they were doing in Missoula. And I was sitting there with Brett Birkland, who was in my recruiting class. Brett was from Helena, Montana. And Brett said, "Oh yeah, my buddy over in Missoula, he's talking about the streak." And I was like, what streak? He's like, "Well, we haven't won Cat Griz in 16 years. I said, what? We haven't won in that long? I was like, that was a pretty good recruiting pitch on the part of Montana State to not let me know that they hadn't won in a long time. So, yeah, so I think as that year went on, I, started to, and again, I was a true freshman and I hardly, it was like, this was all happened fast and furious. And we started winning games and all of a sudden, you look at the schedule, it's like, boy, if we win our last 2 games here, we can make the playoffs. So we win, the Griz lose, boom. All of a sudden the Cat Griz showdown, that week in Missoula in '02, and we're on the road, and they hadn't lost at home in who knows how long, right? So, so winning that game 10-7 in Missoula in the snowy blizzard, and seeing the reaction from Bobcat Nation at the time, I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. And it got even more special in hindsight, because I think it was symbolic as much as anything. And that fact that it was like, okay, the program is finally getting over the hump. We got in the playoffs. We beat the Griz again. That moment was special. Obviously there was a couple of wins along the way. I mean, I think of my sophomore year against Northern Arizona. We had just a almost mathematically impossible amount of time to win a game. We scored 2 touchdowns in the last minute and 10 seconds or something crazy. We had an onside kick, and you guys must remember that game.
Sure do.
A bunch of people filing out. Were you guys filing out of the stadium that day, or did you hang tight? Or were you there?
No. So the onside kick was recovered right in front of me. I was standing there, and I can't remember who covered it. Was it I want to say it was Scott Turnquist, but I might be wrong there. But it
was Cory Smith. Cory Smith fell on the onside kick.
Yeah, there it was. Yeah, that was an amazing game. Yeah,
so that win, there was kind of a miracle win my freshman year in Sacramento, where there was a face mask on the last play, and Nate Cook ended up kicking a field goal, and we won. And so we had the cardiac cats tag. That was the old tag from the '84 team, right? And so and then obviously just you beat Montana those 3 times, and that last game, and unfortunately the playoffs, was 16-team field at the time. It felt like my senior year. We had a pretty good football team, right? We finished 7-4 with the win at home, and we didn't get to go on to the playoffs. But, that last game in Bozeman just was kind of like reflective. I remember playing in front of a game. I think the Portland State game when I was a freshman, playoffs are still in the hunt. It's a November game, and there was 7,500 people at Bobcat Stadium. To my last game as a senior, the stadium was more than maxed out, right? People are sitting on the grass on the sides, and to see double the crowd then, 15,000 at the time, was, jam packed. And so it was kind of cool to see that by the end of that, run. And now obviously, the stadium's been renovated. Those guys have lights on the field, turf field, and all that stuff. So those guys are spoiled rotten now. But no, it was pretty dang fun.
A question. You mentioned the 2002, Cat Griz game, snapping the streak and all that. Where does that just rank in your all-time football moments, maybe at any level of football?
Yeah, I mean, it's right there in the top handful of moments. As I said, it kind of got more special in hindsight too, right? But obviously as a pro, I was a member of a championship team up here, and we won a Grey Cup championship on our home turf in BC in a brand new renovated BC Place Stadium, and we had so much momentum at the end of the year that winning that championship up here was a really, really cool, special moment. And beyond that, I mean, it might be the next best moment, right? I mean, obviously I had some cool moments as I kind of grew into my own as a pro, or significant games or throws that I could remember where I felt like I was either making a team or, establishing myself as a starting quarterback professionally. But yeah, going all the way back to the, my entire career, winning that game in Missoula as a freshman was really special. And I just, I distinctly remember seeing, I have no idea who it was. It could have been one of your uncles for all I know, right? There was grown men crying on the field. And I was like, wow, this was like, okay, I get it. I get the whole Cat Griz thing. I understand the rivalry. And yeah, that was pretty dang special to find that win at the time. So so right up there. And, I still talk about that play, throwing the pass to Junior Adams in the first drive of the third quarter. We were in an empty set and they blitzed, and it's cover 0, and so I bailed and bought a little time and flipped one up to June, and he caught it one-handed. And it was just it was awesome. Joey Thomas had the field goal block, and we win the game 10-7. So it was an awesome game. RJ was a beast that day. Ryan Johnson was a stud, and our defense was special. I felt like Kane Ione was everywhere that day, and Roger Cooper and all those guys. It was just an awesome game, awesome moment to be a part of.
All right. That was our little segment on the Cat Griz rivalry and what it meant to Travis Lulay. And now we're going to play some audio from my Cory Nicol interview. Enjoy. What was your favorite memory of your playing time in MSU?
Oh man, there's a lot of good memories there. You know, we had some big wins. Weber State, like my senior year, you know, they were ranked highly. They were probably a top 10 team, and we went down to Weber State and knocked them off. That was a really good win for us. Although we didn't win the game, Cat Griz, you know, was always a lot of fun. You never, realize the energy and the emotion that's in that game until you play in the game. Especially for, all of us that were not from the state of Montana. It was kind of really eye-opening when you get there and you just see that this game means everything to the whole state, and so once you are a part of that game, you can just feel it, the emotion, just how much it means and all that stuff. So that was really probably the most fun and most like excitement, I've ever had playing the game, where it was just alive.
So we're recording this the weekend before the UC Davis game, but when I plan to release this, it'll be Cat Griz week. What kind of, I guess, to build off what you just said right there, how would you compare Cat Griz to a rivalry I guess you're pretty familiar with, like the Apple Cup?
It's funny that you asked that. So I was most recently on staff with Cal, the football program there, and there's a guy named Gerald Alexander, who a lot of Montana State fans are probably pretty familiar with. He was a DB coach there a few years ago. Great coach, great dude. But he really enjoyed his time in Bozeman. He absolutely loved it. And so we always got to talking about Montana State and stuff like that. And we both said, we're like, hey, the Cat Griz rivalry and that game itself is the Apple Cup doesn't even come close to the level of, just intensity and emotions and really what it means. And we both agree with that. So it's kind of one of those things. And a lot of people who've never been to a Cat Griz game or never played it and everything like that, they'll just say, yeah, whatever, it's a rivalry game. But until you go and like step on that field and just feel like the emotion, like it's pretty unique. And I would put it up there. And obviously you got your Iron Bowls, you got your, Ohio State, Michigan, you got your, all those, big rivalry games. But Cat Griz, I mean, if it's not top 10, it's top 15.
What was just the week leading up to the game like? Just kind of the prep week for Cat Griz.
Yeah, I think each year it was, it's different. There's a different feel, and obviously every game you want to win every game, but it's always it was always the last game on the schedule, and it's just different, and we have two good teams as Montana State. There's always playoff implications and, all that stuff. And, it was just, it was different how we prepared. I think everybody, stayed a little bit longer. Everybody, worked a little bit harder. I mean, just because you knew how much it meant, and then we would have, like a speaker. I remember speakers would come in. It was like Sonny Holland would come in and speak, or some other guys who were kind of, could speak a lot to that rivalry and what it meant to the state of Montana, what it meant to Bozeman, what it meant to Missoula and all that stuff. And so, yeah, just kind of teaching you the history, of the rivalry and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it was, everything definitely gets just cranked up a few levels.
That's kind of how we feel in Montana. It's hard to describe really how Cat Griz just impacts the state and how important it is. It just kind of transcends the game. It's just hard to explain. And I'm glad to hear that some people who weren't familiar with it come and play here. Like they kind of they get it. Like you don't get it until you play in it, and then you do get it, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, going into it my first year, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, Cat Griz, okay, this it's another game. I mean, I get it's a rivalry game and all that stuff. And then I remember, so we're in Missoula in 2008, and so we're warming up and all that stuff, and the stadium's already buzzing, during warm-ups. Stadium's buzzing, it's hopping, and you can just feel like a different energy. And then I happened to be a captain for that game, and so I think there was like 3 or 4 of us like walking out for the coin toss and all that stuff. And as we're walking out like through the tunnel, I mean, we're getting beers, beverages, whatever, like poured on us, and getting cussed at, getting cursed at, and you can just kind of feel just like, okay, this is something different, and then you go on and you line up for the kickoff, and I was on the kickoff team, and just the electricity. I remember just running down the field, just feeling it. And obviously, you got Montana State's got a great facility. Montana's got a great facility, and it's just packed to the brim. And I've been running down on kickoff, and I actually ran down and made the opening tackle on that kickoff, and it was just like, yeah, this is you could tell it was just something different, and at the end of every single play, guys are like pushing, going through the whistle a little bit longer, pushing a little harder, a little bit more hand fighting, all that stuff. Like, and that goes on all game. Like, and it's just something serious, and it's really fun to be a part of.
All right, we want to thank Cory Nicol for coming on. That was a great interview, and if you want to look for the long form of it, Thorny's going to be tweeting it out later on, and probably we'll put it in our show notes in the podcast.
Yeah, that was fun, and it was fun to hear him kind of say that how big the rivalry is. Like, it's just fun to see. It's good to know that like guys that come from out of state who don't really know much about the rivalry, that once they get into it, they realize this is a huge deal. Like, this is just a rivalry separate from anything else they've seen. It's just fun to hear. It's just fun to hear. It's kind of a affirmation of what we as Montanans know.
All right, Thorny, let's move into our closing segments, our buy or sell, our bold predictions, and some Golden Cruisy questions.
Sounds good.
All right. Thorny, are you ready for some buy or sell?
Let's do it.
Only got 3 of them today, so the hot seat's not going to feel too hot for you. All right?
All right.
All right. Thorny, buy or sell? I enjoy Cat Griz Week.
I enjoy Cat Griz Week. It's I've gone back and forth on this, but kind of doing the podcast kind of evens me out on this, and it's just kind of fun. So yeah, I enjoy it. Buying it.
Okay. Number 2, buy or sell? The Cats can win big in the Cat Griz.
I will buy that. I think that they absolutely can get some game-breaking turnovers and things and kind of get away with it. I guess it kind of depends on their definition, but I think the Cats can win by probably 14.
All right, last one, Thorny. Buy or sell? Bobby Hauck.
That is such a that's such an open-ended question. I will buy him as a coach, but I'll sell him as a personality. I listened to both press conferences today. Bobby Hauck is so just not fun to listen to. I have a quote I want to read from you real quick from Bobby Hauck's press conference. Let's see. Where is it? I got to find it. Yeah, Bobby Hauck's on his press conference today said the animosity and the bitterness around the rivalry is out of hand to the point where he doesn't think it's healthy, and he certainly doesn't think it's any fun. Bobby, you helped create a whole bunch of that animosity and bitterness, and you exuded it yourself. So I will sell him as a personality, but I think he's a pretty good fit for Montana. Clearly didn't work out anywhere else that he went in terms of head coaching experience, but I think he's a good fit. So I'll buy him as a coach. I'll split it.
That's weak, Thorny. If you're just like, if I had to put you to the brass right now, buy or sell Bobby Hauck, what are you doing?
Selling it. I hate vague questions, man, but yeah, I'll sell it, I guess.
Okay. It's not a vague question. You know exactly what I mean. All right.
I don't.
All right. Thorny, you're off the hot seat, buddy. Buy or sell fully. I enjoy the Cat Griz Week. I'm going to have to sell that. I used to enjoy it when I didn't care as much. And yeah, the podcast has made it more fun. And honestly, the secure of the playoff berth has eased the tension off my shoulders. But in large, I think too much about it. I care too much about it. It gives me too much anxiety. I mean, even last night, it was Monday morning. It was already 5:00 in the morning or something. It was just so I'm not supposed to be up at this point yet, and I'm already thinking about the game. It's just like it's too consuming in my life. So in general, I do not enjoy Cat Griz Week. Number 2, the Cats can win big in the Cat Griz. I've never seen it happen in my lifetime, but I do believe we can. So I'm going to buy that. I always believe we can. So yeah, I think the Cats can win big. We can get the momentum. We could just bury them. I love that.
Yeah, asterisk here. I didn't say that we will, just that we could.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, yeah, exactly. I believe that.
No prediction.
Number 3, Bobby Houck, buy or sell. I'm going to sell Bobby Houck. And I agree, Thorny. I think you're right. He is a good fit for Montana. He is a good motivator. But I'm selling him. I don't like how he comes across. I just think as a leader for your university, sometimes he just comes across as petulant. And you and I do a really good job, I think, on this podcast of not putting people down. And we're pretty even keel. We're not Griz bashers. We don't slam anybody. And I appreciate that about this podcast. But it's just, his history in the rivalry. When you listen to his interviews, I mean, he's just very dry and sometimes can be somewhat bullish to media members. I'm going to sell Bobby Houck. And I know he's done a lot of good for the University of Montana. I think he is a great motivator. Not all the facets of his leadership do I envy.
Well, it's funny that you say that. Like, yeah, he comes across as you think he's like petulant and all that. It's so funny to hear him have that comment on the press conference. Because if you like read the Ty Gregorak article about how taught us to hate our opponents, like that bleeds out of him. Like it's obvious that he, at least his first stint, I think he's kind of cooled down a little bit. His first stint, he hated the Bobcats. He made it very clear all the time. He like just fueled the entire fire, and it's just funny to have him come out and say like it's gone too far when he's clearly the one who would sit there and just stoked the flames back in like the 2000s.
He is the chief reason I don't like the Griz. And I'm just being straight up honest that if I had to just put my finger on it, like Bobby Houck is the chief reason I don't like the Griz. Like when Stitt was the coach, when Delaney and Pflugrad, they didn't bother me as much.
Did you listen to his press conference?
No, I mean, honestly, no, I didn't.
You'll enjoy this. Somebody asked him about how hard it is to defend the +1 quarterback run game. He said, well, if you would have asked me in 1995, the first time I saw some of the stuff, I would have said it's harder. That was his quote. What do you think about that?
It's just, it's him. Yeah, I like
it's classic Bobby.
Yeah, like I have a lot of respect for the guy. It's interesting, Thorny, because at the like he's like a character in my mind, right? And so like I'm standing next to him at the Big Sky kickoff, and I was acutely aware of my like disposition to him at that point. I was like, well, he's just a dude. He's just standing there. He doesn't seem like this, this evil person like that you kind of conjure up in your mind. He's just a dude. But I think he plays the role of the villain in my mind so well. And that's who I've made him out to be. And it's kind of fun, to have these kind of characterish people in your mind. So I always struggle with it because I don't want to be petulant on my part. I don't want to be hyperbolic on my part. I try to be even keel. And so I always wrestle with this question. And I knew that I was going to have a hard time explaining myself when I put this down. And I think that's why it's a good buy or sell.
Fair enough.
All right, buddy. That's all I got.
All right. Well, I have some questions I've crafted, not buy or sell. Not anything we've done. Ryan Foley, what kind of beer would Troy Anderson be if Troy Anderson was a beer? We do a lot of beer-focused things on this podcast. I'm going to ask you a few questions on what kind of beers you think this person would be.
I think Troy Anderson would be like an imperial stout.
Yep, I have like an oatmeal stout down on here, just like a real full-bodied beer, just a real tough man's beer.
I think Troy Anderson's a high alcohol, like whiskey aged barrel imperial stout, something that's just tough and just like only for the select few.
But he's not bitter. He's not gonna make you regret drinking. He's smooth out there, pretty strong. Yeah. I agree. Stout. That's where I landed.
Nice.
What kind of beer is Kevin Cassis?
He's got to be like a California cool lager.
I have him down as a session beer. So like a red stripe.
I love Cassis, man. I'm going to miss that guy next week or next year.
He is playing on a mission right now. Like you said, I loved how he played against Davis.
You got to think he had a little bit of extra juice for Davis, right? I mean, when I talked to him this this summer. He wanted to be recruited by Davis, and they passed him up. He had a little bit of an axe to grind with him.
That's true. I forgot about that. Bryce Sturck.
Sturck's going to be, he's got to be a porter. Just a plugger in the middle. That sounds like a porter to me.
I have him down as an IPA because he's he's a little bit bitter. He's a little bit sassy. You know, the real number 37 thing, man, that just screams like high bitterness units to me.
I like it, man. I like it.
Jeff Choate.
Ooh. Is it weird that a milk stout came to my mind? I have no clue why.
If you don't have a reason why, then yes, it is weird. If you explain to me, then I can be convinced it's not weird.
Okay, so why don't you go first on Jeff Choate? That's a hard one for me.
Jeff Choate is, man, he's a macro brew. He is any mass-produced lager in the United States.
Give me your reason.
Because, man, he's just a dude. He's just down to drink. Like if you're talking about a guy who's drinking a beer, Jeff Choate walks into the cannery and he orders a Pabst.
Yeah, okay, I can buy that. Yeah, he is. He is that guy for sure. He's a Busch Light, in not even a koozie. He's a macro beer. Okay, I get behind that for sure. Definitely not a milk stout. I don't know why that came to my mind. What? Jeff Choate. Yeah.
Yep. I got
incarnation of a Busch Light right there.
Last one. Bobby Houck.
He's a sour.
He's a whiskey sour. He's not even a beer.
Yeah, he's a sour. He's like a fruity sour.
He's a cider.
Yeah.
All right. That's all I had. Just a little.
Okay, well, you gotta let me know. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you. Like, yeah, he's some sort of a whiskey sour or a cider. You know, he's just he's just a bitter beer of some kind, a sour beer.
There it is.
to match that just sour face.
All right. Bold prediction for last week. You said Alonzo Gilliam was going to specifically run under 80 yards.
I didn't say the whole game. I meant the first quarter.
He had, what did he have? 130?
Yeah, like 130 something. Yeah, somewhere in that range.
Yeah. He was 20 for
133. Yep, 2 touchdowns. Yep, I'm looking at it right now.
Okay. So you were wrong, and I said we would score a defensive touchdown. Again, I was wrong. Every time I pick that, I'm wrong. I don't know why I keep going to it, but that's on Damian Washington for having hands like bricks, because if he would have caught that one in the fourth quarter, he could have just walked backwards into the end zone. Come on, Damian Washington, help me out there. New bold prediction, Thorny. We intercept Dalton Sneed.
Sticking on the defensive side.
Yeah. Poor man's Jordan Johnson.
I'm saying Isaiah Fonse goes over 100.
I think that's really bold. I think we're really limiting touches for Fonse still. Like, he only came in the fourth quarter. No, that's not true. He actually was in the very first play of the game. But Fonse was only spelling it in the fourth quarter, really. So, over 100. Do you think if he has over 100, does he have a long of 20 plus?
Yeah, it's on like 10 carries, 9 carries.
Okay. I like that.
So yeah, if he gets in the game and he gets more than 5 carries, he busts a long one and he ends up with 100. But yeah, he might be pretty limited in terms of like how they use him. But yeah, anyway, so that's why it's bold.
All right, man. Let's move on to our last Golden Koozie. What was that one?
Pete Burfering, good old Pete on Twitter, asked us, will Bobby Houck spontaneously combust if he loses another game to the Cats?
I don't think so. I think Bobby Houck has chilled out just slightly with this. I actually agree with Bobby Houck on his quote. I think the Cat Griz has gotten too big in some visceral way. Like when we were 20 in our 20s and whatnot, and maybe even going to school, it's you get it, like the hatred's there. But I mean, it's to a point now where the proliferation of social media and what we can say, how we can say it, even just like there's a lot of unnecessary things out there. Even our, adults, grown men just saying things that just really not necessary. I think the Cat Griz game is a good for the state of Montana. It's gotten to the hatred levels that I don't really feel is good just for us. So will he spontaneously combust? No, he's not going to spontaneously combust, obviously, but it's too much. And I think Bobby Houck actually said it fairly well. It's just, it's maybe got past the point of being fun.
Well, you changed my answer. I agree with you. Yeah, I don't think so because I think he has mellowed out, and I think a loss he'll be pretty disappointed. But the Griz have bigger fish to fry currently than losing to the Cats, beating the Cats like they're going to be on to the playoffs, like the Cats will be on the playoffs. So, yeah, I don't think he might actually spontaneously combust. I think he would have in 2007, but not right now. You talk some sense into me. I was going to say he won't spontaneously combust. He'll like internally implode. He'll be implode instead of combust.
I think if we could have a challenge to our listeners is just be a good human this week. Enjoy the rivalry for what it is. Buy a beer for a Grizzly fan when you're next to them. Extend the hand out and enjoy what happens. We're both going to the playoffs. We don't have to root for the Griz. I'm not advocating for that, but just be a good person this week.
Yeah, just don't treat other people bad. Just be nice. Just Griz fans and all. Just be a nice person. I agree with that. Good message.
Hey Thorny, I think I know who I want to pick for the Golden Koozie. Do you have someone in mind?
We do have one more Golden Koozie question that we should have talked about much earlier. Shane Driscoll.
Oh my God.
We can't ignore Shane. Shane listens all the time. If we ignore his questions, he'll just never hear the end of it.
Hold on,
he'll spontaneously combust.
Before you read his question, I want to give a shout out to Shane. His stuff on the Bobcat Outsider every week is just top notch. And like, if you're not watching his videos on the Bobcat Outsider, do yourself a favor. Google Bobcat Outsider. He has his own YouTube channel. Shane and Laura is his kind of home base for that. But man, he is just doing such good work. And man, just his editing skills, the way he puts it together, the production value from a fan's perspective. Shane, you're doing awesome, man. I can't wait every week to watch what you put out. Well done, dude.
Thank you for saying that. There's been so many times where I'm like, we should have plugged Shane. I always forget. Thank you for actually remembering to do it. Shane, you do good work. You're better than us.
For sure.
Anyway, but Shane does ask, what's the number one most important thing for the Bobcats to do this Saturday to secure the win? Why don't you just recap out of your list? You gave us a couple things. What's most important to you?
Weather the storm. It's going to be a long day, and it's what we did last year. I think we got to do it again. If I had to pick one thing, we got to weather the storm.
Yep, and I'm similar. Like you can get all to the stats, the red zone defense, conversions, percentages. Be more physical. That's it. Just be the more physical team. You'll come out to win. That's my number one thing. All right, Shane. Well, thanks for the question as always. Thanks for listening. And listeners, check him out, man. He does great work. Last Golden Koozie question. Technocat. If the Cats beat the Griz this weekend, does this finally count as a, quote, signature win, quote, for Choate? I feel like every time we beat a good team, they become trash, and it's always, well, he hasn't beat anyone but UM, but now UM is the biggest game of the year. Rivalry aside, what do you think about that question?
Oh, of course it's his signature win. That's like the easiest one we've had all year.
Yeah, but you think a little bit more about it. Like last year, we talked about after we beat the Griz last year, like that's kind of the expectation now, right? To beat the Griz. Is it so simple as that? Or is it just because they're the number 3 ranked team in the country? Just period. Griz aside.
I don't think you can put Griz aside. I think it's a signature win, regardless. If the Griz were ranked unranked, it's a signature win. No, that's my opinion. I'm sticking with that.
I disagree solely with that. Pretty bad because we've beaten the Griz 3 years in a row. Like the rivalry win's great, but is that the signature win that you and I always talk about? Always asking for signature win. We always usually dismiss the Griz win because the Griz haven't been that good necessarily. In this particular case, I do think it would be a signature win because the Griz happen to be the number 3 team in the country. So yes, this would be the biggest signature win for the Choate era by a pretty substantial margin. I would say it would be the biggest signature win for Choate based solely on the fact that the number 3 team country, because we haven't beat anyone in the top 10 in Choate's era. So it'd be signature based on that alone, let alone Cat Griz. That adds another signature-ness to it.
All right, man. Well, we're going to disagree on that one.
Okay, well, those are all the questions. Thanks for all the questions, everyone. Thanks for listening. Who do you pick as your favorite question?
I think we're going to have to go with Technocat there.
All right, Technocat, congratulations, man. You get our get a round of applause that we clap onto the background. Hit us up if you don't want to talk to us on the board or Twitter. Email us at rrcatcast@gmail.com. Congratulations. Thanks for the question.
Nice job on the golden koozies. It's always fun seeing those pop up on social media too. That's really cool.
Yeah, we had a lot this week. We had to narrow them down. Just we're already running pretty long at this point. So kind of picking and choosing for some time constraints. But that's a good time to segue into our ending here. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We really appreciate it. You can find us on Twitter, RRCatcast, thebobcatnation.com under the recurring Bobcat thread, which have two now. We have the Golden Koozie thread for this specific thing. And we also have the one where I kind of just post the releases and there's a little bit of discussion here and there. So find us on those outlets and let's go get that win against the Griz. Let's make it 4 in a row. Go Cats.
Go Cats.